Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Hope you are doing well. Today I want to talk about the latest Conclave Arcana Airdrop card, which is shown on the screen, Zaran the Scorch. And this is the proposal that came out 3 hours ago at the time of recording. Zaran looks good. We need to talk about it. What are the impacts? What is it going to do for conflicts? You know, how is this going to affect the staking and the efforts around Conclave Arcana Mage Wagons? Let's talk about it. So first and foremost, the lore: Zaran was raised in a sect of Shaitan who worship the brood mother Ursus, the goddess of sovereignty. Her life has been one of reverence, obedience, and ritual combat. She's earned her station through discipline and flawless execution of every right and command. Sounds so exacting. The Conclave Arcana contracted her to eliminate resistance ahead of their expeditions. She doesn't come cheap, but she's worth the price. Across the broken lands, scouts vanish, orders fall to chaos, caravans are reduced to cinders, leaving nothing but ash on the wind. Love it. If the Rift Watchers and their allies are to have hope of encountering the Conclave, they need to stop Zaran before she finishes her work and the rest begin theirs. Cool. Max level abilities: mana cost 8, health 7, attacks, magic attack 3, and speed 3. Relatively slow. Let's feature the visual rather than the descriptors. But the speed manipulation from the ability obviously going to strengthen that relatively slow speed, and then also the fact that it is camouflage is going to give you a lot more grace, you know, in terms of delivering the maximum number of massive blows. The power output here with the 3 is not, you know, overwhelming, but the blast damage at the highest level is certainly going to bring that number up. And I would argue, since it's dragon and it's got a reasonably high, like 3 is reasonably high. I would say 3 is an effective amount of damage. When I see a damage doer that does 2 or 1, I think I'm not using you. Like it kind of need 3 most of the time. And there are certain conditions to that where that would be wrong. Maybe like little leagues, you can get away with some 2 damage doers, etc. But 3 is kind of a minimum for me. Oftentimes I'm thinking about that at the highest levels, and but the blast really amps that up, right? So you could be getting 3 on the first target and second, 2 damage on the second, and in conjunction with Execute, which comes with Nidhogger, the Dragon Summoner. You know, certainly that becomes very interesting. And Execute with the 2 speed buff too. So, you know, while it is perhaps on the low side of damage, it has a pathway to get Execute. While it's perhaps on the slow side of things, it has a pathway to get 2 more speed. In fact, 3, because of that slow. And then the other support kit is actually really interesting. The camouflage, not support. Let's finish on that. Like on the offensive side, the camouflage is going to give it time and space to do what it needs to do, unless your opponent has a Yabat Mat or Yabanius that can reveal, right? Or I guess other cards can reveal as well. But camouflage, very powerful, very interesting, very helpful in conjunction with the damage play. And then rear cleanse, so helpful. I've really fallen in love with rear cleanse. Rear guard, so powerful, especially in, you know, Noxious Fumes, because historically in the game of Splinterlands, if you had Noxious Fumes where every monster is going to be poisoned, they're going to lose 2 health points at the end of every round. That is just usually a race to, like, the path to victory is just somehow not dying. Whether it's bringing somebody with Scavenge and self-heal like a cube, or whether it's bringing a huge hit point shield with a self-healer in the back line, hoping that you can outweight your opponents. Traditionally, Noxious Fumes is a brutal. It's just who can survive longest. Rear cleanse is a massive boon in that particular circumstance, because it doesn't just cleanse the front line. It doesn't just cleanse one spot of your team in particular. It actually theoretically could cleanse 5 team members. If you have a full squad of 6 and everyone's poisoned, it can clean every rear person off, the 2nd through 6. And so very, very powerful, very effective, and very important for that one condition. And I would also say increasingly poison and scatter shot. There's actually a few of those monsters that'll do that. So, you know, then you get this distribution of poison through your back lines, but Cleanse Rearguard can really sort of neutralize that almost perfectly, right? And if it had Echo, that'd be even crazier. But even without, I think we've got a very strong card here. So Offensively, great in terms of, okay, offensively very effective in terms of who it can go with because of its dragon status. And then you could also of course use this with other combinations. Like, would this be effective as an ambush monster? Probably. I know we're going to see some new dragon summoners as well that are going to be pretty interesting. And then eventually we're going to see a Djinn summoner. And so there's some really cool Djinns in the game. This is a card that I think is very strong and very powerful, particularly in context of its 8 mana. 8 mana is not huge. A lot of times nowadays, legendary airdrops in particular can be big mana costs. Even the summoners with Rebellion were 7+, right? So, 8 is not... It's not too difficult to find a spot for an 8, especially when it's got this combination of support and offensive dynamics. And so I think this is going to be a very strong card. I think people are going to really enjoy it. And then to speak about the battle wagons, I think it's going to be important to recognize that despite the repair nature, the breaking of battle wagons, I think we're going to see increased interest around this card. So let's look at 2 factors. One, for how we will see more Mage Wagons because of this card, and one justification for how we could see less. The card seems powerful, desirable, and impactful. I think that alone drives us to more and more launching of Mage Wagons, and therefore, because people were going to want more of it. Also, I'll tell you from my own experience on the complex, despite having a huge amount of production, I'm only getting 5 copies. But my point is, I have quite a bit, and yet I'm only going to get estimated 5 copies that are going to be guaranteed. And then I would argue that with this first launch, there probably is more people going really hard. This is the other side of the coin. While the new card looks great, and I think a lot of people are going to want it, and therefore we might see more activations of more wagons. And there's the HR, a lot of HR isn't going as far as it used to because of how all the black foils and whatnot are stretching some of the leaders and giving them sort of more access while we have less. Maybe another consideration to think through when we're trying to understand how many more Mage Dragons will be activated for the second airdrop is this. With Emberglace, there was a mechanic whereby if you had 5 airdrops that were awarded to you, but you only had 1 Mage Wagon activated, the team decided that you would still get those 5 airdrops. And what that means is, in a sense, you have less risk of damage to Mage Wagons associated with this first airdrop Emberglace. Whereas with the future ones, that won't happen. And so you'll need to have 5 activated. If you got 5 airdrops, you'll need to have 5 activated at minimum, and then they're going to be damaged. And that will translate to greater financial cost to extract Zarin the Scorch. And I'm trying to think through what that means, because maybe it means people will have to activate more Mage Wagons in order to access this card. I guess it does mean that. But then the question, it's not just they have to, so they're gonna. Maybe it's they have to, but they won't. Like they'll just say no to Zarin the Scorch. And so then, if that happens, what ends up what the implication of that would be is that the same amount of production points or HR capacity will go farther with the second airdrop. Because think about it this way: if 777,000 HR per hour gets me 5 airdrops on the first, it's conceivable that it would get me more than that on the second, depending on how many activations there were. If the collection power committed to the Mage Wagon conflict for Zarin is greatly reduced as compared to Emberglace, what that means is less CP committed to the conflict will produce more airdrops for you and for those who do participate. There's going to be 3,000 copies. If only 3,000 people participate, it's like the pie is X big. It gets split between however many participants there are. And when we're all sending all of our collection power, we're going to scrap and fight over that 3,000, but if fewer people participate, there will be, there'll be greater results for those who do. And it's conceivable, either because of the power, the caliber, or the intrigue around the card, or because of the financial concern over Mage Wagons needing repair, it's conceivable that less participation will happen with conflict number 2. I don't know. For me, I'm going to participate fully at max capacity for every single airdrop. I don't care about Mage Wagons being repairable, damaged, whatever. I'm going to pay that cost because I consider it worthwhile investment. If it's $5 a Mage Wagon, I think these cards are going to be at least $20 early on. And so I would argue that financially makes sense. Even if ultimately you have to like collect a few Zarans, sell them to justify or financially, continue that operation. That's just the cost of doing business, in my opinion. So long story short, I think Zaran looks great. I think it seems like it's going to be really impactful. I do wonder how the community is going to react to it, not because of its caliber or capacity, but because of the nuance and difficulty of understanding people's response to the Mage Wagon repair structure. It will be different with Zaran than it was with Emberglace, and that may affect the collection power contributing to the second conflict, which ultimately could radically transform how many airdrops those who participate get. It's exciting to think through. I'm going to be eagerly watching the first few days of the conflict because it's possible that will show us really the tide of how it's going to be handled. Are people deeply chasing after it? Are they totally abandoning Zaran? We'll find out soon, I think. Thanks, guys, for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.